Welcome back to Munro Live and our deep teardown from the Hyundai Ioniq seats, front seats specifically. I have some of the rears as well. Now, I don't really want to use this as a reason to pick on Rivian, but there's an opportunity that we cannot not address. Rivian, in developing their vehicle, did not completely develop their own seat. They actually went through Hyundai and had them build their seat for them. So there's some things that we need to talk about and some decisions that were made in that process that really affected the price of the Rivian seat compared with the Hyundai seat. And I would like to look at a few of those. So let's start with the seat structure. In the times that I have consulted with different automotive startups, there are two questions that I always ask when we were talking about the interior. Where's the structure coming from and how are you developing airbag deployment? Again, because many people think that these are just things that you throw on after, they think it's easy. It is not. You have to remember that you are developing an entire vehicle. A seat structure is a highly engineered component. These are very, very critical to safety within a vehicle. They need to work and they need to be efficient. It is very easy to get lost in the money and have a lot of expense in a seat if you don't really plan it and think it in advance. So Rivian got with Hyundai, developed the seat for their vehicle. Now, this Hyundai is a fairly efficient seat. Specifically, let's look at this structure. This outer structure has 4 main stamped components. Those stamped components are laser welded together. Automatic process, very quick process, not a lot of labor in putting this seat frame together. But Rivian wanted to take a Hyundai design and then modify it to work with everything that they have going on in their seat. So because of that, with this Hyundai seat structure, they had to add on all of these brackets and wires to accommodate the differences in their seat. You'll notice these are all MIG welded. So there's the cost of the bracket, the cost of the labor to install all of these components. They had to add quite a bit of cost without having a normal headrest design with just the stamped headrest holes. Instead, they took those holes and then welded in this tube. Okay, it's adding a lot of cost, but it gets them closer to their design. It would have been a lot more expensive for Rivian if they wanted to design their own structure. So, what are some other carryovers from that? Here is the Hyundai back panel. It's just injection molded, no paint, has a mat pocket, has a retainer for capturing the mat pocket, and it has a carpet flap. It attaches to the structure just by hooking at the lower end, snapping in the sides, and then a spring-loaded snap at the top. This hole is the hole in the Hyundai structure for that upper snap. All right, what about Rivian? Still has those holes, but these holes are unused. Okay, where is this going? A very complicated back panel. And because of the angle of the seat, this component had to attach to space ourselves away from the back panel. So here, this is the Rivian version of the upper snaps that's on the Hyundai. With this component, which is now bolted to the structure, I have this pair of holes, which engage with those snaps. But look, I also have these snaps and these snaps. Now they're buying 2 different types to use across this. Why didn't they go to all one? This is where I come up with a point. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Even though they are not using these holes in their structure, they carried over that concept into this piece of plastic, same spacing and everything, but yet went ahead and added more snaps, changed the style. It would have been nice to have one common fastener across this piece. So we know that there are a lot of differences in the pattern and the breakup in the materials between the Rivian seat and the Hyundai seat. We know that almost all of these A-surface plastics are painted. The only thing that is painted on the Hyundai seat is the background of this switch plate. Everything else is just mold in color. So here's the question. Between this part and that part, do you notice the paint? Is there a benefit that you feel that you are getting from having this paint coat finish between one and the other? Knowing that in total, you could be looking at $20 or more for painting all of the components that are within this seat. Is it worth it? So let's look at some of the seat foams. Here's the seat cushion. Here's the seat back. There's a couple of unique things that I would like to show you here. Our seat cushion, all of the cushion is being held in place with Velcro and then retainers around the side. Our seat back, we have wires embedded in the foam, so there is some sort of a snap feature that is engaging all of these wires. Our heat mat, this one we have a heat mat that is attaching directly to the seat back, but look at here. This heat mat is captured in the sewing. All right, how does that affect us? The double-sided adhesive that is required to attach this to the foam is quite expensive. By going with this method, they were able to eliminate the cost of that adhesive. Think about it, they're sewing all of this anyway. So it is a little bit more complicated throwing this piece into the sewing process, but there's not a lot of cost involved with that. The difficulty that you have, however, is in durability. There are many people who would be worried about this wire becoming pinched or damaged and causing a failure of the heating element in the seat. So that is something that you would have to consider, whether or not you have to up gauge the wire to go with that approach to eliminate the adhesive. Now, there's something else about this seat back, a couple of things that I would like to make mention of. Let's pick on Tesla. There are a lot of things about this seat that are very comfortable, fairly nice design, but this flat molded panel is acting as their plenum surface for their blower. So the blower motor would engage in here. This creates a cavity for the airflow to go up to the seat. Here's one component. Then we have our foam. That is two component. They wanted a dual density foam just so that you have a softer feel in the middle. All right, so there is another component. Then we have our heating element over top of that, another component. So we see all of the layers going from the blower to the heat that is in this seat foam. All right, when we did the Rivian, I complimented them on the way they made their plenum surface. They do not have that injection molded back panel. They have a plenum surface that is formed inside of this mold, and then just a die cut piece of foam sitting over top of that. Now there is a double-sided adhesive application here, but die cutting this flat piece of foam is fairly inexpensive. I think that that was quite nice. Hyundai took that a step further. Their heat mat is the closeout for their plenum surface. So they have a piece of foam and a heat mat. Two components that exist both on Tesla and on the Rivian, but they're able to eliminate all of the other components. I thought that that was very unique. I liked that approach. But let's talk about how this cover is being installed. The cushion cover is just Velcro. I like it, however, it appears that the Velcro actually held stronger than the bond between the Velcro strip to the foam. It took me a while to stop it from ripping that off when I was removing this cover. The seat back. We have a continuous sewn plastic retainer. We have plastic clips and then a wire. That seems expensive, but when we talked about Rivian, we talked about hog rings. Now, this of course is a manual pair of pliers. In an automotive assembly plant, they would have a pneumatic pair of pliers. With hog rings, in trying to assemble this seat. The cover would be in place. You would reach in, you would grab one end of the retainer, and then you would reach down, grab the wire, and then crimp it in place. These are very inexpensive, but the problem is using them is expensive. I had another vehicle that I was just reviewing, and in total we counted up, I think, 112 hog rings that were used across that vehicle. Also, they had 5 locations where when crimping the hog ring, they missed the wire, so they had to get another hog ring and crimp it right next to it. So it caused error in the assembly process. Again, this is very, very inexpensive. People from purchasing would say, wait, this plastic clip costs 20 cents. This is 1 cent, 2 cents. I want these in my bomb. I don't want these plastic clips. All right, well, you're using more of them than the plastic clips. That's one. And then the labor associated with that crimping process makes it higher. All right, there are times that components on the BOM level will be less expensive than the cost to use them. So here's an example back to our nail. Let's say you're paying a builder to build a house, and they come in with a hammer and a box of nails, and they're going to nail, boom, 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 every nail across your entire house. This nail's cheap. Paying that labor, $50 an hour of skilled trades, to nail all those nails in will be more expensive than the box of nails that you purchased. So what are they gonna do? All right, they're gonna use a pneumatic nail gun. They're gonna need an air compressor on site. They're gonna have an expensive nail gun, and the nails themselves will be more expensive, collated, fit in that gun. However, the instantaneous use is costing a lot less in labor to use that nail gun, even though the nail costs more. Sometimes people in purchasing don't consider that. They think of their BOM costs, but they don't think of the costs to use it. I thought this clip was very unique because you see how we have one opening and a lead in? If my wire is positioned here, all I do is push down and the wire snaps and locks in place. So from outside of the seat, all I do is hover over the wire and press. My effort to use that snap is greatly reduced compared to the effort of using this. So even though I'm paying more money for that component, I'm paying less money for the labor. But here is an additional luxury feature, which I don't often see. I called it a footrest, they called it a leg support. This bolts into their lower seat structure and has a foamed assembly to provide support to the back of your legs while driving. I kind of like that because my left knee starts to kill me as I'm kind of angling it off the side on long trips. But this structure seems to be fairly efficient, has been developed over a long period of time, lightweight steel comparative. I mean, the steel of the seat back is only 0.8 millimeters thick. But this seems like it was something that was developed for this purpose and may not have gone through as rigorous of a development process to lightweight. This steel is fairly thick, fairly robust. Now I know that the rest of the seat has to take crash loads, and from your seat cushion down to the floor, it is all highly developed, highly engineered. I don't know how much of crash load needs to be taken by the footrest, but I would assume that this component is probably more expensive than it needs to be to serve the purposes that they're asking of it. With this headrest, there was a normal tube structure. Okay, an easy push button lock to remove this from the seat. Great. Then I had the cover. I took the cover off and I saw the foam. I looked at the foam, and originally, normally, this foam would be overmolded directly to the metal. And I would just leave that. I wouldn't even take it apart. I would just estimate the weight of the metal, weight of the foam, cost that out. But I noticed that there was something else in there. Foam had this plastic blow molding that the foam was foamed to. Okay. is the blow molding just there to take up some of the space so that I'm not paying for expensive foam? This is more air. So then I took this out and I looked through the little hole and I saw that there was an actual mechanism in there. Now, why was this surprising to me? Because I tried twisting the headrest on these seats and I could not get it to move. This mechanism was locked up. The mechanism is actually overmolded to this. I had to take a torch and heat it up to get this to separate. I don't know if it was something wrong that I was doing, but I suspect that the overmold had somehow molded itself into the mechanism and locked up this mechanism because it was not working. So once I was able to get it apart, I could get the mechanism to function. So what I do not know yet is this passenger seat. Whether this passenger seat has the same mechanism, because I cannot get it to move either. I would assume that they would be common between driver and passenger. However, I could be wrong. But it is concerning to me that that mechanism would be locked up in the processing. So right now, I'm in the process of working through the rear seats. Now, these structures are completely different from the front seat structures. You'll see that this structure is actually a tube rather than stamped metal. Tube structure can be fairly inexpensive. This is unique. Normally on the back of foam, we are worried that the foam is going to wear on any of the metal components. And the metal components can actually cut through the foam. So on Rivian and on Tesla, there's this dense scrim material that is on the back of the foam included in the mold, and that is taking up the wear. On this Hyundai, however, they just had this inexpensive PP non-woven material, die cut, sitting over top of the structure, and the foam is engaging to that. So this is taking the wear between the structure and the foam. This is very, very inexpensive. I don't know how durable it is, but I thought that that was quite unique. So there's one other unique thing that I would like to talk about, and that has to do with the seat backs for the second row. All right, a second row will have a folding seat, and the seat back becomes the load floor. So as you're putting in heavy items, this is taking the load. On a lot of vehicles, this seat back panel is a solid piece of stamped steel, and then the metal structure is then welded to that stamped steel. Some vehicles will have an injection molded plastic panel that will fit to the tube structure that we saw on the Hyundai. And I've had a debate going back and forth between the costs of the injection molding and using the injection molding to the cost of a thin stamped steel. They're almost a wash. Sometimes we can get a weight savings from one to the other, and if a weight savings helps the vehicle, that helps. But cost is about the same. However, this one was really surprising to me. This was just an inexpensive piece of die-cut plastic board. Basically the stuff that you'd see at Home Depot to purchase for a garage sale sign. They die-cut this flat material, hog-ringed it to their wire and tube structure, very lightweight, and then just laid their carpet over top of that. Durability, maybe fine if it's just groceries going in the back of your vehicle, but if you have something that had a point load that was really, really heavy, you are going to damage the back of that seat. So as a cost savings, this is impressive. For durability, I have not tested it, so I don't know where it's going to go. But it does solve my issue of a plastic back panel being the same cost as a steel back panel. This would be far less expensive. So I hope you've enjoyed this kind of a deep dive look at the Hyundai Ioniq seats, and also as we compare it to a Rivian seat, which was made by Hyundai, and some comparison to Tesla. There is no one way of doing anything. There are many approaches that can be taken. There is no one answer that is the best answer. It depends on the needs of the vehicle. It depends on the capital equipment that's available and the amount of effort that can be put into the design. So there are some things within the seat that I do really like. There are others that I don't. So it's up to you to decide. If you're just a person purchasing the vehicle, you're probably looking for comfort and you're looking for style. Is this appealing to you, or do you want something that, yes, has had a lot more effort put into it, but also has a much higher cost associated? So thank you very much for watching Munro Live, and have a good day.